Park your car. First check kayak to compare hundreds of travel sites. Then check sensor. Today is a tokusatsu day as we dive into the beautiful core similarities between 2004's Ultraman The Next and 2006's Gamera The Brave. This is Mr.TDF, the video. In the late 90s and early 2000s, we saw tokusatsu begin to evolve. Ultraman and Godzilla found ways to blend CGI with tokusatsu and animatronics like never before, and in doing so brought each character to scale like never before. If I had to sum it up in one way, it'd be this. We could finally see Ultraman having flying battles, and with Godzilla we got to see him do things underwater like never before. But where was Gamera on all this? Well, he had a banger of a 90s trilogy, then he disappeared. But yes, we got to see Gamera fly like never before, but I feel like the Showa era always did a good job showing what made Gamera a unique kaiju, so I admit his 90s trilogy got to build off of that past. However, this isn't strictly about the special effects. Of course, for tokusatsu, the effects are as important as the story and atmosphere, since all of these components come together into a little thing I call imagination. Tokusatsu is the means to explore the meeting of reality and fantasy, after all. But my point here is that the late 90s and early 2000s saw the return of Ultraman, Godzilla, and Gamera after the trio pretty much shared the same absence of only a handful of projects in the 80s. And with the dawn of the new century, kids who grew up watching the Showa era were now grown adults bringing a new creative spark to these characters. And while Ultraman and Gamera, alike, had what some fans will dub definitive trilogies in the 90s, for good reason too, each character would appear in very similar films in the early 2000s. While Gamera may not have had the consistent annual output of Ultraman, I still find it fascinating that we got a beautifully tender and introspective film like Gamera The Brave. Likewise, the Ultra franchise saw an ambitious relaunch of Project N, which resulted in Ultraman The Next kickstarting the upcoming Nexus television series. I've discussed The Next on my channel before, but today I'll just focus more on how the film reintroduces Ultraman as a concept to a new generation, and how Gamera the Brave followed a similar idea. In essence, The Next was a reinvention of the pilot episode for the original Ultraman series, with the fighter pilot crashing into Ultraman and bonding with him to eventually defeat Bionicle. And for The Brave, it's a fitting return to a low-key Gamera experience, and as kids being the central protagonists for the first time since the Showa era. The Brave also features an appearance from classic Gamera Gauss, while also referencing Gamera's sacrifice and Super Monster in a pseudo way. By that I mean the flashback in the beginning is more so representing Gamera of the past, fighting till the end, and the absence of Gamera in the years since. Hence, Aizawa, the father in the story, being present in the opening as a kid himself, where he saw Gamera sacrifice himself years ago. Then we cut to him in the same spot decades later, overlooking it, now as a grieving husband looking after his only son, Toro. Then in Ultraman The Next, we also follow a father trying to look after his son, except for Maki, he's trying to spend time with his ill son, Tsukumo. As for Maki, on his day of retirement, he just so happened to bond with Ultraman Noah, putting him right in the middle of the action as his wife Yoko stays with her son in the hospital. I'm just summarizing it, but that's essentially how it goes. Right from the get-go, we see these two films incorporating real, sincere, and human problems into the core cast as they become entangled with these classic tokusatsu characters. Oh, and they're both steeped in this nostalgic, hazy afternoon feel and sunsets. It's like Sam Raimi's Spider-Man. I adore this aesthetic because it makes the moments that aren't colored with a lazy afternoon feel stand out that much more. Like Ultraman's first fight with Beast the One at night, or when Gamera is taken to that government facility. I should mention that Gamera in this film is referred to as Toto by Toro, since his late mother used to call him that. It's sweet and sets the tone for their bond from the get-go. And for Ultraman, he's never referred to as Ultraman until after the final battle, where a newscaster reveals that children gave him that name. I adore that detail so much, and it goes to show that no matter how adult these Toku characters get, it's important to keep that childlike wonder intact. So for The Next and for The Brave, both films focus on giving these new takes either a codename or a nickname, and saves the names that we all know for some key moments or a narrative payoff. Another core connection is how each film builds up to the titular character regaining or unlocking their full powers. Both Todo and the Next finish off their foe in the climax with their signature attacks. For Todo, it's Gamera's Fireball, and for the Next, it's Ultraman's iconic Specium Beam. I can't stress enough how badass it is for these two to develop the ability to fly at crucial moments. Once they do, it really turns the tide of battle and feels as triumphant as it is goddamn badass. Moments that show these titular characters growing in strength as they are as living beings, battling to protect against dark forces. Ultraman The Next was directed by Kazuya Konaka, a longtime director of the Ultra series. The film was written by Keiichi Hasegawa, who wrote for Godzilla's GMK, several Heisei Ultraman films, and was part of the special effects department for the first two Gamera films in the Heisei era. When it comes to Gamera the Brave, it was directed by Ryuta Tasaki and written by Yukari Tatsui. Tasaki directed several episodes of Kamen Rider shows throughout the years, and Tatsui wrote the live-action adaptation of Your Lie in April, a story that has some slight similarities to Gamera the Brave's human drama, so I can see why Tatsui was selected for that project. The suits for the Brave and the Next are immaculate. The various forms of Ultraman vs. Beast the One are fantastic, and blend CGI to help bring him to life. The air battle is a real highlight, and if you look up the behind the scenes, it's really cool how the production team planned out the flying by using action figures on a small micro set. The effects were handled by Yuichi Kikuchi. For the Brave, the effects were led by Isao Kaneko. Apparently the effects were technically handled by director Tasaki himself, with Isao being his main assistant for the effects. Suits for old Gamera, Todo, Gauss, and Zetus look great, and the textures used with them, along with the film's visual style, just feel like the nostalgic relic that I love to return to with each viewing. All of these elements become the sleepy summertime vibe that feels like 2006, as I remember it 20 years ago. Man, I'm getting old. So these two films have amazing cinematography, early 2000s sunset energy, great suits, wonderfully blended miniatures, similar human stories about fathers that relate to the titular characters, and an all-around focused plot that reminds people why these giant characters can reinvent themselves in subtle ways. Beast One and Zeus may not have the craziest power sets for villains, but they feel deadlier with the respective scales they're put into. They're threatening because they attack the familiar scenes the human cast established. For Maki, the One gets in the way of him spending time with his ill son and comforting his wife. For Aizawa, the arrival of Zetus puts his son Toro in danger because of his deep connection of Todo, since Todo is this inexperienced Gamera going against an agile, older monster. All the while, both Gamera and Ultraman take the burden of battling these vicious foes, even if they're currently underpowered. Their will and bonds of our human cast are what allows them to persevere and unlock their iconic powers. This allows these legacy characters to be introduced through more low-key stories, something more down-to-earth, and grounding them in real human issues. For Maki, he battles to see his son and wife, while Toru grapples with a shared grief with his father and trying to save the life of his friend Mai with the red stone that Gamera was born with. An old friend of mine, Evan Baker, was part of our friend group's G-Force Akaiju podcast. It's been over 3 years since he passed. I remember Evan having a strong connection to Gamera the Brave, and G-Force did an episode with him over in 2020. It's a phenomenal episode, and I recommend you give it a listen for Evan's unique analysis and commentary, which speaks for itself. His ideas on monster films was top-notch, and I wish he was here so we could hear his thoughts on all the recent kaiju media that's been released. At the very least, the podcast captures our time with Evan, and whenever I look back on Gamera the Brave or I see the vinyl figure I got when I was a kid on my shelf, a reminder of what these nostalgic films can bring beyond their runtime. A reminder of the people along the way, and if I had to describe Gamera the Brave, it's exactly that, making time with what you have, and being brave with our own fragility. For Ultraman The Next, it's about living in your moment and never saying goodbye. The film's ending theme by the Taka Matsumoto group is Never Goodbye, and I think it captures the essence of the film eloquently. Hanging in there to see the ones that mean the world to you. That's why Maki was only Ultraman's host for a short time, and Ultraman Noah's connection to him carried on to all the other hosts we see in Ultraman Nexus. Bonds that carry on unspoken, bonds that are there when you need them the most. Those were my thoughts on these two fantastic films. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. This video is part of my journey to celebrate Ultraman's 60th anniversary this year. It's a trip down memory lane and one that I look forward to revisiting. Thank you so much for watching, it means a lot. It means a lot. Stay tuned for more and check out my previous year's Ultraman video essays, including my Alien Magma Boulders web series. Until next time, Shwatch!